Oh,
house.
okay, yeah. What are they doing?
They moved the clinical services over to the Lowell Community Health Center.
I saw that, I
Yeah,
saw that.
in the paper, yeah, and then they're gonna build 23 units here with their apartments for their sober clients.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But they're getting the treatment part out of it.
Yeah, treatment parts going to Jackson Street.
Yeah.
Who signed this? I guess they signed it. I never saw it before, and even in the banking, I guess they signed a 60-year lease.
Really?
Yeah. Must be shocking for the first 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. 60. Yeah. Be an urbanite.
Yeah, then I'll walk down to the train, get the train, like the 3 o'clock train, go back in.
Yeah.
Take the train out, go back, take the train down. Work Thursday.
Oh, the blue line goes all the way.
275.
Yeah. Yeah. Pumped up. Quality, not quantity. Hold on, Mikey. Nothing.
Hey, look.
Hi, Council, nice to see you.
Boss there.
Oh, it's still a good response to that. What's going on?
We're just joking that, same presentation.
Yeah, essentially. Can't wait.
It's good, FaceTime.
Good format.
FaceTime. I didn't bring my camera.
It's very fun.
We're gonna switch cars.
You been up to Maine yet? You gone up there yet?
I was up there Sunday doing my yard. Had a lot of damage.
Mr. Clark?
Personal viewing over there? Is that personal viewing?
I want to make sure the people in the crowd can see.
I don't know if the TV would that, I think it points on this one. The corner, the TV points on the screen. I bought a new car, a used car yesterday. My car's so I went down to Audi Burlington. I'm like, in my mind, I'm really just spent 45 grand. Get in there, and it's like a 2014 with 12,000 miles on it. 25. So I'm like, 25. But even put like 10 grand on it, it's still like $300. Oh, it's insane. It's like, yeah. Show me the math. And I'm like, wow, that's really, it's like a $25,000. It's crazy. It's absolutely ridiculous. 2014, 12,000 miles. What did they do? They rolled it back. Yeah, probably, yes.
My wife always kept a car for 10 years, and then her father even swept that. I always got her that real car. And they kept it going until she got her that real car.
I had the Ford Taurus, I had never since '08.
Mine didn't only gave me at work. Just turned 40,000 miles today.
So you can't leave the premises.
beautiful day out. We should be outside.
My mother-in-law, make sure you say hello to my Kevin.
Yep.
Not in the hospital, yes, sir?
Really?
Yeah, she's back. She was home yesterday. My mother was home today, so we're all back.
So sad. She'll be around 80 years. She thinks she's somebody you put her. She looks like me. She looks like me too. Look, she did that when she did that.
She forgot about you a long time ago. Don't touch me. Don't. Yeah. I didn't find anything, Bill. You didn't email it to me, did you? Yeah, put it back. I don't have any wording on it, so put it off for the second. What was it about again? Educational thing. We'll talk and get the wording for the next one. Sorry about that.
Being 5:37, sorry for the delay. This is a meeting of the Finance Subcommittee with the purpose of discussing, thank you, Councilman Lanasa, brought the notice. The items on the agenda to discuss the impact of Lowell High School project, the costs on residential taxes and commercial taxes. I suspect that we'll do the residential tonight, and then next week we'll do commercial, followed by either capital and/or debt. Is this not on? Yep. Because I think each individual subject warrants a discussion. And so with that, Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll? Here.
Here.
Here. 3 present. Mr. Manager and your finance team, thank you for being here. Council Council Samaras also in attendance. We booked it tonight because tomorrow night is full, but we will. Mr. Clerk, are we scheduled for the next couple of Tuesdays?
Yeah, there's one on a Monday, Council, and there's another one on a Tuesday.
Okay. So we'll get that out there. But with that, Mr. Manager, the motion is self-explanatory, and if we can get into the residential tax rate tonight, I'd hope that we'd probably do commercial, but I think it's good to have a separate meeting just for businesses as well.
Yes, thank you. I have to credit the financial team. I think they've done a wonderful job putting together this presentation, especially as it relates to the residential tax impact. And I'm going to just turn it right over to Connor Baldwin. If you can just go through the slide presentation that everybody has relative to the impact on residences.
Can we just ask the person in the control booth to maybe turn up the mics? I think
Yeah, this isn't.
Yeah. I think it just needs to be adjusted there. I mean, there's a small crowd. We can't. Okay. With that, why don't we proceed? The folks at home can hear it. Oh, here we go. So thank you for taking care of that. But with that, Mr. Baldwin, for members, I did call Mr. Baldwin today and ask him to get us some information on residential tax rate over the course of the last 5 years and the impact that has had on people's tax bills. So that is before us, as well as some additional information on the levy. So, Mr. Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Manager, for the introduction. We have prepared, myself, Mr. Conley, and Mr. Haley, have prepared a selection of slides that detail the impact that a projected high school debt service cost would have on residential taxes. So we'll just start going through those. The first slide here is distribution of the values of homes in the city of Lowell as of fiscal 17. So the chart denotes the number of properties that fall within each value range. We did this in order to better show the folks what the tax impact on their home will be depending on which value range they fall into. So you can see that under $150,000, there's 516 homes in Lowell. The largest group is between the $250,000 and $350,000 range, with over $10,000 properties. 350 to 450, just under 5,000, and then a number of properties, much smaller number, 200 properties between 450 and 550, and then 114 properties in the city over 550,000. Now, the reason why we did that is because depending on the value of your home, the impact to your home will be different. So what happened there? Sorry, technical difficulties. There we go. These charts here that are on the screen and in the presentation before you lay out the projected tax impact depending on the 4 options approved by the council: the full renovation option, the ad reno option number 2, ad reno option number 3, and the new school at Colley. So we've included tables that have the projected tax impact on each of those for the different value ranges. The average single-family home in fiscal year 2017 in Lowell was $253,000. That's the typical value that communities use when determining a tax impact. However, for a project of this magnitude, we really wanted to show a range to give different residents an idea of how this project will impact them individually. So for that average single-family home, the full renovation would have a tax impact of $228.58. Option 2 would be $266.12. Option 3, $248.11, and then the new school at Colley would be $291.14. So the next slide just has the other. Yes, of course.
Can I ask you, what is the median number, median valuation in the city? Would you happen to know that?
Not offhand. The average would be the 253. However, we can report back to the finance subcommittee perhaps at the next.
I'm just curious what that what that number would be. I think that also tells that's a good statistic that says this is how many people would truly be affected by a.
That's certainly information that we could bring back to the committee
for
the next meeting. So just to look at some of the other values. Oh, we went backwards. So at the $350,000 value range, you can see that it gets more expensive. The tax impact is greater, I should say. So for a full renovation, it's $315, up to the higher end of the Colley site at $401.32. For the $450,000 home, it ranges from $405.11 for the full reno to $515.99 for the Colley site. And then finally, for the $550,000 home range, it ranges from $495 for the full reno up to $630.65 for the Colley site. So that's sort of a general overview of the tax impact on the residential properties. So I'd be happy to take any questions from the subcommittee and my colleagues from the finance team.
Councilman Linazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate this presentation and these numbers. I have two questions. The first question, when we do finally have the numbers in June when we're to vote, I think it would probably be a good exercise if we could actually do this again, so we really see some numbers. So again, I guess it's more of a comment than a question, so I would appreciate if the administration would provide the council with those numbers. And then my question has to do with the impact when we actually go out and borrow. I believe at the last meeting we talked about the debt service coming on our books, and I want to say it was FY 2020. So I know we don't have a crystal ball, but how do you think the numbers would be impacted? Again, looking at, say, the property values going up 5% between now and 2020. I don't think they're going to go down based upon all the good work everybody in appointed and elected positions are doing. I don't think they're going to go down. So maybe if we could look at what the impact would be if the assessed values would actually go up, say, 5% over the next 3 fiscal years. So I think that's probably an exercise that we should probably look at.
Yeah, it's probably better to look at what the value is at the time that it hits the
Right.
debt service than this, yeah.
Right.
We could do a historic analysis like
Oh,
the
good.
last 3 years,
Yeah.
and then add that and
Okay.
do that computation.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, yeah, just to follow up on, so there'll be short-term borrowing, is that how it works? I mean, none of the when does the SBA money start to come in? I guess is the question to follow up on Councilman Linazzo. Number one, when are we gonna go out for long-term loan order? And then two, when does the SBA money come, reimbursement come?
Through you, Chairman. So for example, in the feasibility period, we've already started receiving reimbursements
Right.
from the MSBA, and that'll go throughout the process. So ideally, we'd probably short-term borrow until we get the full reimbursement in, see what our final liability is, and then look to permanently finance that amount.
We should probably know this, but short-term is eligible reimbursement or not? Say for the actual project, construction
The
project.
total construction project will be reimbursable. How we finance it beyond that will be upon us to decide as a community.
Short-term borrowing before we go out, I mean.
It won't cover any fees or anything
They do not
associated
cover
with
any
work.
ban.
No.
They wouldn't cover the interest on the bond anticipation notes or the legal filing fees, bond counsel fees, financial advisory fees, which are small comparatively speaking, but are costs that would be borne by the city.
What is that? I mean, what would be the short-term borrowing costs?
Maybe somewhere in the range of $60,000-$70,000 for the feasibility study bond anticipation notes. So the money we're financing now for the feasibility study stage, it could be somewhere from the $60,000 to $100,000 range.
Okay. So for the construction project itself, just for my own edification, the money that we will borrow until we go out for a permanent loan order in 2020, is that right? Are those, is that interest eligible for reimbursement or not?
No, it is not.
It's not? Okay. So we're gonna have to borrow money for essentially 2 to 3 years?
Depending on the life of the project. Yeah.
Right, okay. And do we have an estimate, is that factored into these numbers, what those costs would be?
I don't believe so, no. I believe that's just on the permanent.
Okay.
So if I could jump in, Mr. Chair, the costs we have projected are based on a number of assumptions that, we have to take here as we sit here today, one of which would be sort of permanently financing the whole thing, the entire cost based on the conceptual cost provided by Skanska. So we haven't gotten into that granular level yet, and we've been working with the representatives from Skanska and developing a cash flow, really staying on top of that. We meet each month to go over the cash flow with our OPM, but as we move along in the process, we'll certainly fine tune and we'll have better numbers at the more granular level. However, for this conceptual level, we had to take into account a number of assumptions.
I'm presuming, I'm assuming that that's gonna be a substantial number over the course of 2 or 3 years to borrow. Just the city's contribution? Maybe I should take a step back. So as we go through the construction project, SBA doesn't start reimbursing until final loan order is approved, or do they start reimbursement?
They start reimbursement
Right away.
pretty much immediately, I would assume.
They already do.
As soon as you have a
Yeah.
project funding agreement and then you go through your financing and have your expenses, they'll commence their
Yeah.
20-year distribution.
Council Larry?
No, just to build off what you're saying, so they're reimbursing now for the feasibility, correct? Okay. I think, I agree with Councilor Malinowski. I think we need to look at that in terms of what it'll be over time, also taking a start a couple of years before. I also like to take the impact of what is this gonna look like in terms of cost. And it's challenging to do because you're really looking at it, the project should last 50 to 75 years. What ultimately are we looking at in terms of, like, when it comes off the rolls, what is that gonna save us in terms of what we're trying to do to maintain what we have today? I think that's equally important, harder to do, probably not something you're gonna be able to pinpoint a number, but failure to do this means X amount of dollars in the future. And I think that's, again, equally as important. There are also the non-building impact costs. I mean, you're gonna have, we spoke about sidewalks, you're gonna have sidewalks downtown because you're gonna end up destroying them if you go downtown as well. What is that impact built in? What is that really gonna cost in terms of what we're required to do or what we wanna do? And I think this is a good, I think, weekly or bi-weekly meetings in terms of pulling this together as we go forward is I think is pretty positive. Because that way we can definitely get an idea as to what our appetite is. Because I think ultimately whatever number we finally decide upon or whatever number is bid, I don't think we're gonna be able to deviate from that. The only other comment I would have, and I know we touched base on it briefly, and we had a good report, is the debt exclusion in terms of what's financially more advantageous to the city. And I think the way the administration's leaning, but I haven't really heard it definitively, is that it's not advantageous to do a debt exclusion, or maybe I'm incorrect. I think we don't have a lot of time to make those decisions. I think you said you had to get on the ballot by August for this year. Two things to that. One, I think we need to make, what is financially more advantageous to us? Is it more advantageous just to do it in our existing process, or is it financially smarter to have a debt exclusion? And if it is smarter to do a debt exclusion, do we have to do it now, or can you wait a year or so prior to the project beginning? Kind of just to and you don't have to answer that now, because I think it's just something you got to pull through in terms of what you would make as a recommendation for the council. 'Cause I think other towns, it made sense for a variety of reasons. It may not make sense for us, but I think getting your recommendation in terms of how you finance it is something we really, at some point, as we get into the granular numbers, we're gonna really need to know.
If I may, Mr. Chair, we have had some discussions, to your point, about when a debt exclusion, if it is so desired, needs to be approved or voted on. And we've had some discussions with our financial advisors as well as some folks from the Department of Revenue. And you can exclude the debt at any point throughout the process. So it could be after the project is complete. They said that there is that opportunity. You know, most communities choose to do it in the beginning. Just I don't know necessarily what the rationale is, but it is you do have the opportunity to exclude the debt at any point.
Well, it's good to know. I mean, I think the only part I really know about it is with what Somerville did in terms of it. And I think getting probably more reading on my own end, where the advantages or disadvantages are. And then getting really at the end of the day, once we go forward, a recommendation. But it's good to know you have some flexibility. You don't necessarily have to do it now. Thank you.
So knowing that we'll be holding a hearing, holding a meeting at some point in the near future on the debt aspect of this, perhaps it might be a good idea to, in the form of a motion, to request the city manager provide just a short memo on the advantages and disadvantages, the pros and cons of a debt exclusion, and include for the rest of the members, Mr. Baldwin, if you could, that item you just mentioned. I've been in municipal government, I don't know, for 30 years, and I did not know that you could, even after a project, that you could put a question on the ballot to exclude it. Did I misinterpret that?
Yeah, I think the manager said on point. The danger of that is if you've already built the project and you vote no on the debt exclusion,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to find $8 million within your operating budget to cut because
Yeah.
you've now voted
Well,
down.
that's something you need to
Yeah.
line out. There's a disadvantage in doing it in the future, what have you. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, you do it up front, but there is an opportunity, if we were so to go that route. And I'm not sure I think just getting the information out that we can't, it's possible to do a debt exclusion, that once the project is paid, it comes out the tax rate. I think we need to know from a fiscal perspective, what is that going to do to this community if we did it or if we did not do it. And I think that's kind of a big issue moving forward that we'll address in a couple of weeks if we could get that information.
And we've had internal discussions about this, about the fact that you can borrow some money and then pay for it out of the existing debt, the levy limit and everything. But we'll give a complete report of some of the pros and cons that we have come up with.
Okay. So in the formal motion, Councilman Linazzo will make a motion, to second by Council Leary, to request the city manager provide a report, an analysis of debt exclusion, and that we'll take that up at a future finance meeting. I mean, I think that's worthy of a meeting itself.
I agree.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the opposed, the motion carries. Further discussion on the residential tax rate.
I just have one quick question, if
Oh,
I
yeah,
could, Mr. Chairman. On the contingency dollar amount for all 4 projects, is that dollar amount the same? I've heard a number of $20 million as a contingency. Is it the same for all, or is it lower for, say, new construction at Cawley?
I believe
And the reason I bring it up
contingency,
is
yeah.
we all toured the property in Winchester, and I believe that had a contingency of $5 million, and it was about $130 million, I think, all-in cost. So, again, looking at our numbers at 344, the highest, I had heard in some of our meetings that the contingency was 20 million. I just didn't know if that was throughout all 4 projects.
I-
Okay, okay,
that.
okay. Thank you.
And Winchester had expired most, if not all, of their contingency, right?
They did,
Right.
they
Yeah.
did, yes, they did.
5.5 million. Okay. So you'll get us the median information, Mr. Ball and Mr. Manager. I think that'll be important. I had one more question. What was it? No, it'll come to me. Oh, I'm sorry, Council Smaris.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Manager, when you're developing this budget again, could you actually break it down to a page which will show the cost for each option, but 2 stages? One which would include what must be done at each option and what should be done at each option. You know, we'll say, take the Cawley area, talk about sidewalks. I mean, but the thing is, we don't have to put I don't believe we have to put sidewalks in, but if we should, what would that cost be? If it's downtown, it's transportation for the downtown. You know, there are costs that are out there that are not necessarily mandated for this project, but probably should be done. It's looking to make sure that we know how we're gonna spend that money, or what we can expand to or what we can't expand to. So there are certain things that the project must do for the building, but there are add-ons, and the add-ons can be transportation, it can be sidewalks. Yeah, if it's possible to break it down that way a little bit.
I think I understand. I think I understand what you, but it's gonna, I'm just saying
Yeah.
is, we'll certainly look at it. It's gonna be tough to determine about sidewalks, because how far do you go with the sidewalks? If we limited them to one point in time, we'd be able to give the cost, but why don't we see if we can get like a hypothetical and say how much that would, if we added that on.
That's the point.
Right.
I'm trying, I mean, the whole thing is, when we're looking at both projects in the downtown, people want certain amenities.
Right.
There are certain things that should be done to ensure safety of our children. But the question is, there are some things which are absolutely mandated, but there are other things where people are talking about the costs, and the costs and the figures given are basically outlandish. I mean, they're extreme. And what I'd like to do is narrow as much of that as possible, so when we're talking about what's gonna be on the tax rate, we know pretty much this will be the actual cost. There'll be no surprises. It's just another method of looking at how can we prevent surprises. And there's no intent on that, but sometimes what I've found, what happens is, because something was overlooked or just not explained at that particular time, the more we can get out on the table, I think the better off we are. Thank you.
So as I understand, I mean, I think this, within the scope of the various projects, whether it's downtown or Collie, within that footprint, will the cost of those projects, those individual options include sidewalk work? And then outside of that is perhaps something that we will need to look at as well. I think there are two, I mean, we're talking sidewalks and infrastructure and busing at both. These are, I think, extraneous costs that are part of the discussion but will not be factored into the proposals that we're going to receive in 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, no,
And we'd like that information. And I think that makes some sense, whether it's sidewalks, busing, any other issues that, traffic control.
we actually, with estimating sidewalks, we can actually do like linear feet to extrapolate how much it would cost to do, whether you do one sidewalk or do you do two,
No,
both
but
sides of the road.
I think there's got to be a perimeter. I mean, there's got to be some finite definition, as you mentioned. How far do you go?
Right.
What roads do you go? Where is the most traffic? Whether it's both sides or not. But it does make some sense. I just want to touch on the information that I requested. If we could, Mr. Manager, Mr. Chief Financial Officer. So what I did ask, and maybe some of my colleagues would like 10 years of what the cost of the family, average single-family tax bill has increased by 5 years. And so in 5 years, this will be the average home, $253,000 valuation. It's increased by $500. So essentially a little over $100, around $100 a year. Right?
That's correct.
Average.
And it's for the whatever was the average value in that year.
In that year.
Right.
Right. I mean, I know we're
That
trying to
fluctuates with the
quantify
market.
and make statements as general as we can that you can communicate, but by the same token, there are some assumptions that are built in. And generally, is it about 1% or 2%? About a 1.5% increase in the levy?
That has been the trend. In some years, there has been a decrease in the levy. However, it's been, the policy of the administration to hold the increase in the levy to approximately 1.5%.
Okay. What year was that? I mean, I think that's a good reflection that we need to let taxpayers know that some years we did reduce the levy, and hopefully they saw that in their tax bills, but that's all about valuation. We did our best in some years not to raise taxes. So I think that's important to let people know, because there is a general notion that my taxes go up. How much is it going up every year? Well, we have made attempts, and we've been successful in not raising taxes. It would be good to know the years.
So, yeah, in 2016, they used the new growth to reduce the tax levy by 2.
Okay.
But that's what it was. And that's one of the problems with when you talk about the increase in the tax levy in May, we don't know what the new growth is going to be. We don't know what the free cash is going to be. So if you can reduce that tax levy by using those funds. So apparently in 2016, it worked out very well in the tax levy.
Okay, and I think it was a good motion that Councilman Milanazzo and Larry no, I mean, maybe their thought, because what is the projected value of homes going to be, and what is the actuarial cost in 3 years' time? That's people want to know dollar figures, and his best estimate that we can come up with based upon assumptions will be important. And I think the other items, and I'll make some copies for my colleagues tomorrow night, this is helpful to know, that we've saved a ton of money. We've made some saving through policy changes, including, salaries. Some years, employees didn't get salary increases. We were addressing pension liability. I think it was Councilman Milanazzo's motion. It'd be nice to know how much we have saved with the GIC. It was controversial, but it has saved taxpayers millions and millions of dollars, and that would also be helpful. So they've been very lean budgets. Very few newly funded positions have come in through the budget, so we're lean, And we're doing everything we can with those budget busters that used to cripple the city, in my opinion, before taking these measures. And we're in a good place, in my opinion.
And this council's vote to aggregate the energy for residents and business in the city of Lowell, you saw a report a couple of weeks ago, it saved millions. So it's not saving taxes, but it's saving money for the residents because of being able to enter into these good contracts to provide energy to the residents of Lowell.
Well, we wanted to talk about residential tonight, and we did. Anything else?
Just wanted to add one thing through you, Chairman. When compiling this information, we also looked at ordinary expenses over that 5-year trend. So these are department budgets, not salary, department expenses. And that's only gone up 50,000 citywide on the city side from FY13 to FY17. So that's a testament to our departments living within their means.
You know, one thing that's very important, I know we lose sight of it. I know we always talk about, snow and collective bargaining agreements. Those are some of the things, and health insurance and pension. Those are in my opinion, those are the go-to budget busters. But, and I hope that sometime soon we're going to get that home rule petition. This charter school assessment is significant. It's the next big budget buster. So we negotiate huge savings from other parts of the budget with health insurance and collective bargaining, and we build our reserves. We use our free cash to pay off snow and ice, and then out of nowhere, that is a lot, and that something needs to be done at the legislative level.
And we have nothing to say about it as far as, they just told us, we're going to increase it by $1.8 million this year.
Right.
And we have no say in, well, we don't, we haven't reduced class sizes by that much, or, it's just that's the amount.
Right.
And we, the city side, has to absorb it.
Right.
Even though it's a school issue, it's the city side that absorbs that $1.8 million increase.
Well, that home rule, they're
I
in
know
the
you-
middle
yeah,
of
I have it.
legislative session, and I know that, this has a snowball's chance, but I think we have to start getting some movement down in Beacon Hill and get it off the dime. Otherwise, we continue to just paddle
Like-
upstream consistently.
Law
So,
department was instructed
Okay.
to draft it immediately.
Great. We intentionally want to keep these meetings brief so we can all digest it and bring it forward to the city council meeting. So that is what we did tonight. There was a planning board meeting as well. Anything else, Councilor Samaras, Malinazzo, O'Leary on this? We'll bring forward tomorrow night as a report of progress on the impact of the residential tax rate. We'll take up commercial tax rate next week. Mr. Clerk, do we have a meeting date yet?
I don't have it on me,
Okay,
Council, but I believe
fine.
it's next Monday.
Next Monday again. Mondays are tough days. Well, thank you. I appreciate this. This is good. We have a couple of motions that we'll bring forward. I knew we'd bring, this would generate particularly on debt and good questions on valuation and median. And we'll refine as we move forward the impact. So, motion to adjourn by Council Leary, seconded by Council Malinazzo. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. This meeting stands adjourned. Let me thank Mr. Healy, Mr. Conley, Mr. Baldwin for coming. And you, Mr. Manager. Meeting stands adjourned. And Mr. Clerk. And members of the audience.